Today, we're comparing two of CFMOTO's newest and most affordable dual sport motorcycles, the CFMOTO CFlight 230 Dual and the new CFMOTO CFlight 250 Dual. On paper, the 250 is the more advanced bike, but that doesn't automatically mean that it's the best. So in this video, I want to answer two practical questions. Number one, what are the differences between these two bikes? And number two, which motorcycle should you buy? Let's talk about release dates. First off, the 230 Dual was released in the Philippines in 2025. The 250 Dual was just released this year in 2026. Let's start with the most obvious difference, the price. The 230 Dual Carb is the budget entry option at 99,900 pesos. The 250 Dual Carb is priced at 128,900 pesos. And if you want the fuel-injected 250 Dual, that price goes all the way up to 141,900 pesos. Right away, we find out that this is not a small difference. The 250 Dual Carb costs around 30,000 pesos more than the 230, and the FI version pushes the difference even further. That means that the 230 is clearly aimed at the buyer who wants a dual sport motorcycle at the lowest possible entry price, while the 250 is for the buyer willing to spend more for more performance and a more upgraded overall package. Before we get into performance, one thing worth pointing out is that these two motorcycles in comparison are both carbureted. For some buyers, that is still a real advantage. Carbureted motorcycles are mechanically simpler, easier to understand, and often easier and cheaper to maintain. They also appeal to riders who prefer a more old-school, straightforward ownership experience. Of course, fuel injection is more convenient in some situations, which is why the 250 Dual FI exists. But for this 230 versus 250 carb comparison, both bikes still keep the traditional carbureted setup. Now, let's get into the actual bike differences. The 230 Dual uses a 229cc air-cooled overhead valve single-cylinder engine. It makes 14 horsepower and 16.5 Newton-meters of torque. It uses a 5-speed transmission. The 250 Dual moves up to a 249cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine. It makes 24 horsepower and 22.5 Newton-meters of torque. It also gets a 6-speed gearbox. That is not a minor upgrade. That's a major jump in output and road pace on paper. The 250 also has a higher top speed at 120 kilometers per hour versus the 230 Dual's top speed at 95 kilometers per hour. Let's talk about weight. If you want to know which bike is heavier, then that's definitely the 250 Dual. It's 150 kilograms. This is 132 kilograms, so that means that the 230 Dual is 18 kilograms lighter than the 250 Dual. Now for ground clearance. What you guys might find a little bit interesting is that the 230 Dual has actually a little bit more ground clearance compared to the 250 Dual. This thing is actually 20 millimeters more ground clearance than the 250 Dual. Both of them are at 840 millimeters seat height. Both bikes also have the same wheel sizes. Both of them have 21-inch front and 18-inch rear wheels. So this is not really a small bike versus big bike story. It's a story about a simpler, cheaper, lighter dual sport versus a more powerful, more complete, and more expensive dual sport. So who is the 230 Dual really for? This bike makes the most sense for the budget-conscious buyer who wants a real dual sport layout without stretching the budget. It's a good fit for newer riders, practical riders and buyers who care more about manageable ownership than outright performance. If your riding is mostly city use, provincial roads, rough roads, and occasional light trail riding, the 230 still makes a lot of sense. It's not just the cheaper bike, it's the simpler bike. The 250 Dual is for the buyer who is willing to pay a little more for the motorcycle that simply has more. More engine power, more torque, a 6-speed gearbox, liquid cooling, and a bike that feels more substantial overall. This is the bike for the rider who wants one motorcycle for everyday road use but also wants real flexibility once the pavement ends. Farm roads, rough provincial roads, coastal access roads, and mixed surface weekend rides. This is where the 250 starts to justify its price. I think the biggest buying mistake is assuming that the 250 makes the 230 obsolete. It does not. The 230 still has a clear role because the price gap is real, the weight difference is real, and simplicity still matters to a lot of people. But the mistake on the other side is assuming the 250 is only about engine size. It's not. It's about the total package. More output, more cooling capacity, more gearbox, and a more substantial overall feel. If you mainly care about affordability, if you want your first dual sport, if you want simpler ownership, and you will most likely use the bike for daily riding, back roads, rough roads, and occasional off-road fun, I would point you towards the 230 Dual. But if you can spend more and want noticeably stronger performance, liquid cooling, a 6-speed gearbox, and a more grown-up version of the same basic dual sport idea, I would point you towards the 250 Dual Carb. And if your budget is even higher and you specifically want the newer fuel-injected version, then you go with the 250 Dual FI version. My honest take is simple. The 230 Dual is the practical budget dual sport. The 250 Dual is the more complete dual sport. The 230 Dual wins on affordability, lighter weight, and simplicity. The 250 wins on performance, cooling, gearbox, and overall capability. Neither one of these bikes is for everyone, but both make sense when matched to the right buyer. If you want to see these bikes in person or try them out, come on over and visit us at Mad Mountain Motors here in Baguio City, and we'll help you figure out which one actually fits you. So again, this is Dre from Mad Mountain Motors, and I'll see you guys in the next one.